Hey folks, so today is day 9, the end of day 9. As you can see, we are in our hotel room here in Munich, Germany. This morning we took a walking tour of Dachau, the first concentration camp. And they don't call it a concentration camp anymore. It is a concentration camp memorial. But that was our activity for this morning. And I'll tell you, it was a very heavy experience. It was tough to walk through and keep your emotions in check for sure. I know that in particular, I felt from the time we walked in the gate till the time we got on the bus, I was pissed. I was pissed off. And again, I know I talked about this some days ago on this tour yet. You know, some people believe, some people don't believe in supernatural stuff, but I felt like you could just feel the evil there. You could feel the heaviness of what happened in that place. And so maybe part of it is just knowing through the natural course of life and learning history a little bit about it. But we had walked in and hadn't even heard any stories yet, really, any specifics until we really started touring through the barracks and through the main building and through the cells and through the crematorium and the gas chamber and all of those things. And then it just kept getting worse. But Dad, how did you feel touring through Dachau today?
Well, it had this uneasy feeling, like a nasty, evil feel to it. And then as we walked through the main gate, the first thing that came to my mind was your grandmother and grandfather.
Yeah.
Every time that the subject would come up back in the day, there was not one word spoken, but there was tears building up and rolling down their faces. It was very uneasy feeling, and there was a darkness there that I just can't really explain.
So just for context, my grandmother and my grandfather lived through the Nazi occupation in Germany. My mother is a Polish immigrant, so are my grandparents. And so I essentially am a first generation American on that side of my family. And back in 2008, we went there. My grandmother and I and my sister and my mom, we traveled to Poland I think it was her last time being there. I don't know that she'll ever go back. She's 91 or 92 now and has health issues. And I don't think she has any desire to go back there, but she went there with us, showed us all around the country. We went to the place that she lived when she was a little girl, and we saw the hole in the floor in the kitchen in the house that she grew up in, where her and her sisters had to hide from the Nazis. And so knowing that and having that context, the concentration camp tour today was just a little heavier. But that's what he's referring to. Of course, he was married to my mother and knew my grandparents. So continue. Sorry.
It's okay. The part that was really breathtaking was going through the crematorium, the gas chambers, and the whole system that was in place. It was like an assembly line of how they treated these individuals. And as we went through the tour, it just got more heavier and heavier. And there was times where I had to turn away and just pull myself away from what I had seen today.
Yeah, and so like some of the things to see, like we walk through the barracks, we walk through the administrative building, we walk through the courtyards where the Nazis would bring prisoners, line them up against a wall and execute them for sometimes just coughing in the middle of the night, whatever they could do. The experience there that they built for these prisoners was to take away everything from them, including their identity. And so when you have no name, when you have no origin story, your life story has been taken away from you, your clothes, your hair, everything that makes you you is taken away. The whole every day, 24 hours a day was built to be absolutely miserable if you were a prisoner there. And they made sure of that. Now, also keep in mind that Dachau was the headquarters of the SS. That's where it started. And the SS guards would be lining the perimeter of these places, and they were extra brutal to people. I mean, so we did the cells where they had VIP prisoners, prisoners that were heads of state or bureaucrats or royalty from other countries around Europe. Hitler wanted them to they didn't have to do any work, but they stayed in a cell, but they were given meals. They were inside. They were taken care of a little better than the rest of the inmates or prisoners there. So we walked through that, and then we made our way across the ground, the square, if you want to call it that, into the back end of the camp where they have cement slabs that are filled with gravel to represent all the barracks. They only have 2 of them up, 2 physical buildings, but the rest are the cement slabs where the rest laid.
Well over a dozen of those slabs.
On either side, yeah.
Yes.
There had to have been 24 to 30
Mm-hmm.
of those slabs. And so the other thing to note that the tour guide told us about was that, all the buildings we walk through, of course, have a story, but probably the emotional or gut-wrenching stories come from just walking on in the square, where every morning the prisoners had to line up to be accounted for. And the ones that died the night before had to be drug out and lined up so they could be counted. And they stood there for sometimes hours and hours on end with their hands at their side, stand up straight and look at the ground. All kinds of stuff, torture, putting prisoners on their knees and executing them, all kinds of stuff. And so another thing I think is important to note is that we learned today that the Nazis killed a lot of people that weren't Jews, people who were everyday German citizens, but maybe they had ailments or they were handicapped. Well, if you weren't any use to them and the work that they had to do, they'd kill you. Or if you got hurt working, they'd just kill you. And so they extinguished a ton of people that also were not Jewish. So it just, from all angles, it was complete bullshit.
And the other thing too is he has said that if you weren't particularly the political flavor of what they stood for, you were also placed in the camp and possibly killed too.
Yeah. If you weren't the right religion, if you didn't have the same political views, if you were gay, if you were handicapped, all these things, and they all had different color squares on their uniforms to signify who they were: red, purple, yellow. Yellow was for I think it was the Jew.
Right.
Pink for the gay people. There was just all kinds of different ways for them to single you out, but yet keep your identity from you. The way that they singled you out was how they figured they could torture you more. We saw a video in the main administrative building about the death train that the Americans found when they liberated the camp, and they showed the pictures, they showed the video footage from way back then. It's all very gruesome and it's all very disturbing, but what I think they deserve to get credit for is that they don't pull any punches. They don't try to make it easy for you to digest it, because it shouldn't be. And so the pictures and the stories they tell, like when they were talking about how they would torture some of these people by handcuffing them behind their backs and then hanging them from a 10-foot pole by their wrists behind their backs, which would, of course, hyperextend or destroy your shoulders. And they'd leave you there for sometimes 4 hours as a punishment. And who knows what you did? It could be something as stupid as, making noise in the middle of the night, even if you're sleeping.
The other thing is that you were never allowed to make eye contact with any of the guards or
Correct.
the SS soldiers.
Yep. Yeah. And after that, we made our way over to the crematorium, which was at the far end of the camp, and then a little bit out of the main square, the main view of everyone else or everything else. And as we were walking there, the tour guide was telling us about how there's a Lutheran church that operates there. There's, of course, a Christian or Catholic chapel of some sort. There's a monument for the Jewish people that were there. And there's also a convent there. There's a whole convent full of nuns that live there. And they don't ever leave. They spend their whole lives there. I forget what type of nuns he said they were. But it's all there. And then we made our way over to this crematorium, and Brandon was the name of the guy who was our tour guide today, gave us the whole rundown about how it worked. and what they did and how they would assemble prisoners there and lead them into this building and take their clothes. And because disease and lice for sure was running rampant, and other things, they would put them in this staging area, this room, take all of their clothes and throw them in a sanitizer. And so what Brandon was saying is they did actually sanitize the clothes because they had to try to control the outbreak of the lice, but they also were there to sanitize the lice from the people. And so they would take their clothes and lead them into the next room, which over the door, there's a sign in German that says shower room, which we all know is not a shower room. It was a gas chamber. And they'd put them in there, 35 to 45 people, I think he said, at a time. Lock the doors and put the pellets in from the outside, and then expose them to, was it high heat?
Yeah.
To make the gas?
Yep, high heat. And then it would turn these pellets into cyanide gas.
And 15 to 20 minutes later, everyone in there is suffocated and dead. They would open the doors, let it air out, and send prisoners in there to pull out the dead bodies and bring them into the next room. And the next room was just a staging area of stacked bodies, and they would wait there until it was their turn to be pulled into yet the next room, which is where all the ovens were. And many times, the individuals who were pulling bodies into the oven room were children. In fact, Brandon shared a personal story with a conversation he had with a survivor of Dachau, and standing right outside the door to the crematorium, he was 12 years old when he was a prisoner there. And his job was to drag bodies from the gas chamber to the next staging area and then drag those bodies into the oven room for those prisoners to then burn the bodies. According to the tour guide, there was smoke billowing out of the chimney of that crematorium 24 hours a day for a long, long time, which means they never stopped. They never stopped killing, and they never stopped burning people. And all these people just disappeared as into a cloud of smoke. Families didn't know where they were, most of them, and they died suffering. It was real heavy, man. Dad, what do you, sorry, I'm kind of eating up all the time here, but what do you got?
Well, there was a place behind the crematorium where they showed memorials and gravestones of thousands upon thousands of bodies. And it was like a deep hole in a trench where they had placed all these remains. And they had markers and gravestones representing some of these individuals that were killed in the crematorium.
Yeah. And then they have, there's a little wooded path with more memorials to the different religions, if you will. They also had the firing, the pistol, they call it a pistol range, where they would bring prisoners, line them up against the stone wall, and the German soldiers would pull out their pistols and execute them right there. And so now here they are stacked up there for the prisoners to drag to the crematorium, which is 30 yards away. And I guess I don't know what else to say, man. It was a heavy day. The other thing that was pretty interesting about there is all the school children. There was a ton of school-age kids. And so what we learned was that in Germany, in order for you to graduate high school, you have to learn about the Holocaust and you have to visit a concentration camp. You must do that in order for you to complete your education. And so the German people, I don't want to say that they're ashamed of what happened here, because a lot of them weren't around when it all happened, but they're aware. I don't know that that's a part of their history that they're proud of, but they make sure that you know about it and that you're aware. And in many places throughout the camp, they have different little monuments or memorials there. And a lot of them say never again or never forget, which is, like I said in the short posted earlier today, that we use that in America. We use that for 9/11, for example. We'll never forget. Well, they do the same thing here. And so it's just interesting to see, because when you haven't been here and you have this preconceived notion about what it's going to be like or how the people might react or what they might have been thinking, but then to really learn from them what they do think and how they do see it and how they do react. You can see it. It's a little tough with the kids, I think, right? Because kids will be kids. They don't quite take it seriously. There's some of them are laughing and joking, and you can tell they're not taking it seriously. But I did notice quite a few of them, most of them, the school-age girls, they didn't look like they were having a good time. You've seen some tears and some welled up eyes. So it's hitting some of them for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's great that they do that to make sure that they never repeat it again, but everybody must know.
I agree. Yep, that's for sure.
So, yeah, then we left, but we walked that thing for 2.5 hours. And it's a slow stroll because you don't want to miss anything. And just like I felt at Omaha Beach, maybe you're not supposed to leave there unscathed. Maybe you're supposed to feel all that, and it's your way of paying respect, and then also the people that made it out of there. You talk about resilience. Holy shit. And then also one of the other things that I found interesting, I just remembered, was that Dachau, although was a very brutal place, was not the worst. In fact, Brandon, our tour guide, had said something about the amount of people they exterminated. Well, in 1 month at Dachau, whatever the number is that they exterminated there, the extermination camps that were mostly in Poland, if I remember right, killed that amount of people and burned that amount of bodies in a weekend. And so just to give you a little bit of context about how many people they exterminated. And like I said, there was smoke billowing from that chimney 24 hours a day for a very long time. So after that, we got on the bus. It was raining again also, and it was cold as balls.
Yep.
We got on the bus and went to downtown Munich, did a little bit of walking around, ate like savages, which is kind of odd, right? You go and have that super heavy emotional experience, and then an hour and a half later, you're eating sausages in downtown Munich. Maybe it's not appropriate, but what'd you think of the German food? We ate lunch in the oldest brew house in Europe, maybe the world, but I'm not going to say that because I don't know for sure, but definitely in Europe, and they have traditional German food. What did you think of the food?
Food was amazing.
What did you have?
I had sausages, various sausages. I did have a taste of sauerkraut.
Yeah, this guy.
Oh, man. And I'm not a sauerkraut fan, but it was awesome.
Yeah, you gave me your sauerkraut before you tried it because you thought you weren't going to like it, and then he wasn't getting it back. I ate his and mine. But I had sausages too. Sauerkraut. I had a whole big liter beer, and the beer, amazing. If you're a beer drinker and you've not been to Munich, you need to get your ass here because you will have a day for sure. What else do we have? Oh, Bavarian cream and strawberries.
Apple strudel.
But the strawberries and cream might be the best thing that we've had here yet, other than the sauerkraut and the sausages and the beer and the pastries.
Yeah, the beer was pretty good.
Huh? Yeah. Now, for those of you who don't know, this is a momentous occasion. My dad drank a beer. First of all, he drank a beer. Second of all, he drank it with me, which is the first time in 43 years of my life that this has happened. But we are in a special place, and this is when in Rome, you do as the Romans. So when you're in Munich, you do as the eunuchs, whatever they're called. So yeah, it was great. We had good food. We had coffee. We did some walking around, and we just gourded ourselves with German food. And maybe it was good to do that to try to lift some of this emotional exhaustion from the first 3 or 4 hours of the morning.
And the bus ride away from the camp memorial, it took me a good hour and a half just to be at ease after we left such a heavy place. And for you folks that have never been there, and if you're a history buff or even a military history buff, you need to go. you need to be there. We're towards the end of our leg of our trip. We've done the beaches, and we've followed the footsteps of Easy Company. We're going to continue to do that. We have another big place to go to tomorrow, and that's going to be another highlight of the trip.
Yeah, it certainly is a place that you need to see, not only if you're a history buff or anything like that, but if you're just somebody who cares. And if you are a person that feels some kind of sense of, I don't know if responsibility is a good word, but maybe responsibility just to know. So if you, as we've said in probably every video now, if you are fortunate enough and have the means to check these things out, I implore you to at least make an effort to do so. It will change the way you see the world. It'll change your life in one way or another. I know it has for me. I learned a lot of things, especially today, that I never could have imagined. I knew that these things were brutal and I knew that they were horrible. But to hear firsthand accounts through the voice of our tour guide who heard them firsthand, so secondhand accounts, and hearing them standing in the place where they happened, knowing that you're standing right next to this building, and 80 years ago there was piles of dead bodies right where you're standing. It was a place where hundreds and thousands of souls left their bodies to ascend to heaven or wherever they went. It's a strong, heavy, uneasy feeling. But maybe we owe it to them to experience that just so that we can know and never forget. An important thing to remember is that the German people are aware of their history. Again, they're aware. They don't ever want anybody to forget it so that it never happens again. And they have went through great lengths. In fact, the survivors are the ones that have fought and championed the hardest for these things to be taken care of, open, and their stories to be told and the facts to be spoken. So I know that I felt a little bit of sense of responsibility to at least hear it out and be there if I could. So take that for what it's worth. Everybody sees it differently, I'm sure, but that's my view. Pops?
I agree with you 100%. Being there versus seeing movies, documentaries, or read about it in history books, it's
not the same.
It's not the same. Being there, being present, and be able to feel what's happening is unbelievable. I will never forget this ever.
Yeah, me neither. Tomorrow, as he said, we are on our way through Austria to the Eagle's Nest, where we learned it's quite an ordeal to get up there. You can't just drive up to the parking lot. You got to go to one parking lot, which is at this compound, Nazi compound, that we're also going to take a look at and tour. And then you have to take a special shuttle bus to the base of the cliff, I suppose it is. And then either you could take a 10 to 20 minute walk up to the actual house, or you can ride the gold-plated elevator through the tunnel that brings you right to the center of the Eagle's Nest, and you go up that way. And so we're going to do that tomorrow. Apparently there's a cafe up there where we're going to have lunch, and hopefully the weather is clear so that we can take part in observing the amazing views. Apparently they are breathtaking. So we are looking forward to that, but it is midnight, so we're going to call it quits. Dad, what do you got? Closing thoughts. You're up.
I'm ready to go. I'm ready to finish this thing, and we're going to do it tomorrow.
Hopefully you're not hungover. You had a beer today.
It's all right. I've recovered.
Already. All right. Perfect. All right, folks. We'll see you tomorrow. Stick with us. We'll bring you as much as we can. See ya.
See ya.